This episode of the ZuLoo Poodcast is sponsored by ZuLoo Inc., a benefit corporation dedicated to the goal of universal access to toilets, hygiene, clean water and sanitation through the power of social enterprise. Learn more at ZuLoo.com.
When I entered this competition, I started it as a joke. The very first thing I did was to try to come up with a joke name for a space toilet, which was the Translunar Hypercritical Repository 1, or short, Throne. Like, I gotta go sit on the throne. It was funny.
Welcome to the ZuLoo Poodcast, where we talk all things poop, toilets, and sanitation. Through insightful news, impact stories, and quirky humour, we aim to discuss and highlight the critical role toilets play in whisking poop out of our lives, the impact toilets have, or lack thereof, in the health and wellness of humanity, and what ZuLoo is doing to help solve the current global sanitation crisis.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the ZuLoo Poodcast. We're excited to be here in studio. It's like, I don't know, it's just refreshing always to be here with
Feels
you.
like it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's good to see you guys.
Yeah.
Well, we see each other every week, don't we? Yeah.
That's right.
At least that's the illusion that we seem to put off. You know,
We just
every week.
There's podcast
every week,
magic.
every day,
Yeah.
we're thinking toilets, we're thinking poop. And today we have the opportunity to listen to Boone Davidson, who was the NASA toilet tech winner. Is that what it's called? So Darren's repping our
Can you see
NASA
this?
here.
Can you see this? Okay. This is
Looks
legit NASA t-shirt bought in Houston, a block away from NASA itself. So
Wow.
So it's a more legit
it's
t-shirt
even more
than
legit.
any other.
Smells legit.
Smells like rocket
Yeah.
fuel.
Got your rocket fuel. Or maybe that's my deodorant.
Maybe that's just
Love
you.
it.
Or maybe it's just me, my own aroma.
But we had a great time talking to Boone. So I'm excited for you guys to listen in to it later. But before we do that, we'll hop over to Darren for some toilet news.
And what a cool name,
things.
Boone, right?
I
Boone.
know.
It's
So
like,
cool.
I want that name. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's like he was an outlaw and then became a rock star and then designed a toilet that
Yeah.
worked in space.
For space.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
this guy could not be more hardcore.
Yeah, if you meet Boone, and you'll see him on the later in the show here. Yeah, he's a rock star. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, Poo News, let's get into it. Speaking of space and the final frontier, we all know that it's all about toilets in space today. We're talking about Boone and his technology. And we've had a couple articles on the Poodcast we talked about, like SpaceX and their toilet issues. And it's easier said than done, pooping in space, you know?
I can imagine.
Really hard.
It sounds very
It's one of those
difficult.
things where you take gravity for granted until you
Yeah.
don't have it. And
Yeah.
then, when it comes to poop, you don't want that stuff floating around, you know? And this first article, we're talking about NASA. I think we mentioned on Troy Hale's podcast a few months ago how NASA left 96 bags of
Yes.
poop
Yeah, that's right. That's
I
right.
remember.
on the moon. If you haven't watched that podcast yet, go back and listen. And now, of course, NASA is going back to the moon.
To collect.
The Artemis mission. Is it 2024 now? I think they're planning on
Cool.
going there, landing on the moon. And one of the they're going back for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is they want to see what's in those bags of poop.
Oh, really?
So
They're
it is
really going to go collect?
It's a retrieval mission.
Yeah, well, I thought ZuLoo was going to be the first one, but NASA's already. I think they listened to our podcast and they kind of took our idea to go back and look at that stuff. But yeah, they're going to these bags of poop, which were left there not because we're wasteful people, garbaging, throwing on the moon, but it was more of a weight issue. Like they're bringing back all these space rocks. They brought back more space rocks than they had planned.
Yeah.
Which would be tempting, right? Oh,
It
which one
was-
do we leave behind?
It was just a trade. Like,
we're like,
you give
yeah,
us rocks, we'll give you our rocks.
yeah, it's a little bit of trade. Earth, poop for space rocks. So anyway, we left them up there, and they just been sitting there. And NASA is eager to see what
What
they
happened?
contain. Now, the And there's a lot of people that wonder, well, what's, obviously there's bacteria in poop and how
we
long.
created our own life forms.
Like,
are we creators?
How has it evolved in the last however many years? Like you could have just called it a science experiment. We did this on purpose. We want to know.
Yeah, we didn't set a camera by the bags of poop to like watch to
see if anything crawls out.
If little green creatures come out of it, and but yeah, so that's kind of the question, right?
Yeah.
We're trying to solve that, or NASA is going to let us know. But
there was enough gravity on the moon
That's
to keep
what
the
I was
bags
wondering.
of poop
How did
there.
it not because they kind of like floated on the moon, right?
right, so if you were to poop on the moon, it would slowly fall to the ground.
Okay.
But it would stay.
It would stay there.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
there's enough pull.
And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, how many bags did you say it was?
I think 96 is the number.
96.
I mean, think how
I don't
heavy
know.
all those rocks were that they're trying to compensate and switch the weight for. So it's got to be a lot.
Yeah. So, and each one of them apparently are labeled like, Neil Armstrong's got his name
my
on it. So
Why would they
we'll have
label
to
their
see.
poop?
We'll have to see what he had for lunch 50 years ago.
Because you got to know if that's your alien offspring. Of
That's
course
right.
you want that
It's
label.
your own DNA.
It's your own legacy you're leaving.
It's your own Frankenstein, your space Frankenstein.
Yeah. So part of it is to find out what if there's contamination. Like you talk about the biological footprint of, okay, if people go to another planet and we leave things, what happens? Do we?
Yeah.
Now the moon is a little bit of a, it's not like there's like an ecosystem necessarily, but it is another planet, right?
Yeah.
So now there was, what do they call it? There was like disinfectant in the bags that they pooped in.
Oh.
So the question is, well, maybe that just killed all the bacteria, so there's nothing going on. It's just dead poop.
Really is just space rocks now.
But, maybe solar radiation could like revive those little guys. And, it's a mystery, right? We're not sure. But the part of the reason for going back and not just to clean up the moon, probably that's a good idea, right? But also it informs us on future missions like going to Mars and like, hey, can we, poop outside on Mars and everything's okay? Or is that going to disrupt the, the ecosystem of Mars, right? So anyway, that's in the news.
Dang,
that's
we have to
happening.
wait years to find out what happens.
I'm suddenly very curious to know what's going on in those bags.
Yeah.
Could you imagine like you open it up and, you get little flowers growing? Or,
Moon flowers.
We're
Something.
post Halloween. I finished watching all the Alien movies recently, so that's where my mind's at. Some kind of organic compound that's just going to obliterate humanity.
That's right. That's right.
Made by humanity.
So
It's a wicked origin story.
Yeah, so it may turn into a movie, I think, if it turns out to be crazy, right?
Yeah.
So that's in the news. Also, obviously, we're going to be talking to Boone in a minute here, but the NASA put out a press release saying that they have they have created. This is a few months ago, right about the same time we were talking to Boone. That they have designed this new space toilet. Now, what Boone said is that they don't necessarily take your design lock, stock, and barrel.
Right.
They may take some ideas from it. That's the whole idea, is to give them some ideas. And so they have now reinvented the space toilet, which offers more comfort and efficiency, especially for female astronauts this time. Because as we were talking about before we started, old space toilets all your astronauts were men, so they designed them for men, right? And so your female astronauts that are going up, we're having a little bit of a challenge.
I can't even imagine. I would love to see this design because I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Well,
You
What
mean
is
the
the
previous
solution?
toilet design or this current design?
And all
Both.
of the above.
Yeah.
It does seem like a really hard
We'll put an
problem.
image. Well, I don't know if you could see what I'm looking at, but oops. It doesn't look super.
It doesn't look
Attractive.
like a toilet.
It looks nothing like it.
Kind of looks like a compactor.
It does. Like a trash compactor.
It kind of looks like a trash compactor.
Does not look comfortable.
But you have to think, okay, it does not look comfortable. And so
It's a lot of hoses.
But you don't have any gravity either. So the whole idea is to position yourself over it because it might be on the ceiling, right?
The toilet's on the ceiling?
Well, it could be, right? You could
You're
poop
rotating.
You could poop on
yes,
this.
Yeah.
You could
right.
stick the toilet up in that corner, up on the ceiling, upside down, and it's going to be totally fine. You know. Now they do have a little privacy screen, so there is like a little door that you go in and close it, so you have a little privacy because it is close quarters, right? You don't have a lot of room. Plus, if you were to, if the toilet were to malfunction, maybe that's another little thing to contain
barrier.
Yeah.
to contain the poop. There is a clip that I think Troy Hale shared where on his show where there was there was a space poop floating around in the cabin.
Oh my God.
Everybody's
And
it's
nobody-
an audio
No one would
clip. Everybody's
claim
like,
it.
whose is that?
Oh
Whose
my
is that?
Oh my God.
I know everybody was denying it. That's not mine. That's not mine. Well, there's only like 3 of us, so it's got to be one of us. But they do have a little door there so you get a little bit of privacy. But they said it's designed like the actual hole itself is much, much smaller than your wider bowl that we're accustomed to because there's less room for air, right?
Yeah,
you don't want it just floating around. Yeah, you want it to go right in that hole. So imagine you probably have to practice. I bet they have a whole, week-long training. Today we're going to do toilet practice here at NASA, and I'd like to go interview them and see how that goes. But the reason why the opening is so small is just to make sure that it goes where it's and it's all suctioned, right? So
okay.
You got a little
weird
suction
sensation.
for the back end, and then a little suction for the front end, and that was part of the redesign because anatomies are different, so that needs to be different.
Wow.
Anyway, so that's so next time you're up in space, you're going to have a better experience than you did if you went up in 1975 or whenever when did they stop that Apollo? Was it 70? I don't know. Anyway, whenever they stopped it, that was, so we have made improvements.
Hurrah for that.
Humanity has made progress.
I love it. Well, without further ado, let's hop into Boone's interview. Well, Boone, welcome to the ZuLoo Poodcast. We are so excited to have you on the show. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Hey, I would love it if just right off the bat, you would give our listeners a brief introduction into who you are and what you've got going on behind you. What's your connection to sanitation? There's a rocket in the background.
I'm on the space side of sanitation. So my name's Boone Davidson, and a couple of years ago, I entered a competition that NASA had put out to the general public called the Lunar Loo Challenge. And me and a few buddies put together a design for a space toilet. They wanted space toilet designs for a lunar lander that would bounce back and forth between space station orbiting around the moon called the Lunar Gateway and down on the lunar surface. So we put together a design. We worked with an actual astronaut on this project and submitted to NASA, and we won first place and a bunch of prize money. So that's all the space stuff. I like space.
Congratulations. Just first off, I mean, that's a big deal. It is a cool accomplishment. Like, way to go.
I've always wanted to have some way to say that I had a thumbprint on the history of human and space exploration, and this is a weird one, but it's still a thumbprint.
And one maybe you thought you would never, didn't cross your mind, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. When I entered this competition, I started it as a joke. The very first thing I did was to try to come up with a joke name for a space toilet, which was the Translunar Hypercritical Repository 1, or short, Throne. I gotta go sit on the throne. It was funny. And it kind of, after I thought about it more and more and more, and came up with some ideas that I thought were decent ideas, and managed to rope in this astronaut family friend, developed into less of a joke and more of a real thing.
Yeah, I think you had 2,000 applicants, right? The
2,000 teams
for the competition.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty amazing. That's really cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I was just going to ask. I listened to your story of how it all kind of came together. What's the biggest problem with
with space toilets. I mean, you think that, you could put a man or a woman on the moon, you could at least have a functioning toilet. But if NASA is out there asking the public for help, that they're grasping at straws or something, right?
Well, it's not. Yeah.
What's the biggest problem that they're trying to deal with there?
Sure. So the biggest problem essentially is that the toilets of today are designed for male anatomy more than they are designed for female anatomy, and so they're functional for women astronauts, but they're not designed for them. So they have some extra steps they have to go through to make sure it all ends up in the right place. And in particular, when you want to go number one and number two at the same time, that's a big challenge with the female anatomy when you're using today's space toilets, because urine is handled through a separate system than feces, and usually you want to do them at the same time because a lot of those muscles are linked, And so with the male anatomy, it's pretty easy. There's a hose with suction that you just put up to your front, and you can sit on the toilet part that's for number twos, and you can go at the same time. But women, it's not as easy to position that. And so our toilet design was more like Earth toilets, where you can just go number one and number two down into the same receptacle. There's no separate hose for going number one. And there were a few other things that we learned about that were more male oriented than female oriented that we tried to fix as well. But I think that was the big one. There was also just the unpleasantness of the weak suction. So the astronaut we worked with on this project, her name was Susan Helms, and she was telling us that there is suction within the toilet that is supposed to keep the poop down after it comes out of you, but it's pretty weak suction. And so once in a while you'll get some nudges that, as you can imagine, not very pleasant. So that was another challenge we tried to tackle with our ideas on our design, is to keep the material away from you better than current space toilets can do.
So you made the toilet more universal, right? I mean, as I guess we have more and more women astronauts, that's a bigger issue, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. And so I think that was part of the reason we won, because in this challenge, NASA outlines you need to fit all these criteria for your design. It needs to be this size maximum, weigh this much maximum, make this much noise maximum, have this much power usage maximum, fit all those requirements. But then on top of all of that, we did extra research to see what are other problems with current space toilets that maybe we could try and find potential solutions for, and add that to our design on top of meeting all the challenge requirements. And I think that's what won us first place.
So did you actually build an actual working prototype as part of the challenge, or is it all purely a design issue?
It was entirely conceptual. We didn't. Most of our design was just taking modern, already tested and approved concepts, putting them together. So the easiest way to sort of boil down our design is you put a memory foam seat, so you get good contact all the way around, because you don't want any gaps anywhere. On top of a bladeless. And are you guys familiar with Dyson bladeless ring fans? They look like a big open circle, and you're like, where does the wind even come from? They're pretty cool. And if you research the technology behind them, you'll find that there's actually sort of a sucking force through them. Like there's wind blowing out around that ring, but because there's that air going, it actually pulls air through it from the backside of it. And so that's sort of a suction force that we tried to use by just putting that bladeless ring fan facing down underneath your memory foam seats. It'll hopefully pull and keep down everything that comes out of you. And then above that or below that will be sort of a diaper genie sort of container, which is similar to current space toilets. But any parents out there who are familiar with diaper genies will kind of be able to picture what I'm talking about, where there's usually closed and you can briefly open it to get the waste inside, and then it closes back up. And then we also are including some super absorbent polymers inside the container to stabilize the liquids. That was another requirement, is they don't want you to just pee into a big container and have the pee floating around in there. You need to stabilize it somehow. And so we put super absorbent polymers, which are essentially, kids will know them as Orbeez. Orbeez are a toy that are super polymers. They're also the crystals inside of diapers. Those are also super absorbent polymers, and they just latch onto liquids and they hold them in one place. And so, if you have those inside your container, you'll have the liquids essentially turned into solids and easier to control.
Oh, super cool. So I know I watched your video about Susan Helms and your background there. Sounds like she was seems like you would want to interview an actual astronaut with actual experience with space toilets. Sounds like she was very helpful and instrumental there. So you got a lot of good feedback from her, right?
So she was absolutely pivotal in our success in this competition. You can do all kinds of research online. Plenty of astronauts have been interviewed about what it's like to poop or pee in space. It's a pretty common topic when you're talking to astronauts, is that people like talking about it because it's funny. But it's just, I don't know if you're going to get the same information as just talking one-on-one with an astronaut and being able to bounce back and forth with questions. And so we actually managed to connect with Susan and have a back and forth conversation, which is a little different than just watching somebody else perform an interview. And we got a whole lot of information, and we were able to bounce ideas off of her, saying, before we met up with her on Zoom, we came up with lots of design ideas, and we pitched them to her. We're like, what do you think of this? And she said, it probably wouldn't work because of this, or this wouldn't work, or I like that. And so she was very helpful with kind of helping us think from a zero gravity standpoint, because she's been there. She lived on the International Space Station for 6 months. It's easy for her to tap into that frame of mind, whereas we're just kind of guessing.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of going through my mind is, she's got the experience to say all the things that we wouldn't think about, because we can think about zero gravity all day and only imagine some of the problems that we might come up with, but it's probably not even 1/10 of the problems that she actually experienced, right? I also think it's very neat that Susan is a woman and that she has experience throughout the years. And that probably, I think we've already said this, but just to rehash it, I guess, gave you guys a massive leg up, because now you're not just saying, okay, well, like what's already been done before. There's an extra level of innovation there that caters to a whole new population, just as Darren was saying, future astronauts, people who are next up, right? It's not just, okay, who's already been there and knows, but it's next up. This is their experience doing lunar landing. Very neat.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd be amazed without thinking about it. Maybe it's just from a man's perspective. I was amazed at how difficult it can be for women to use the bathroom in space. Maybe women wouldn't be so surprised by it, but I remember one of the things Susan told us was that on the International Space Station, when she was up there were two toilets. There was an American toilet, and in one of the modules for the Russians, there was a Russian toilet. And she couldn't use the Russian one because if you're menstruating, that toilet can't handle that. There's a filter that'll get clogged or something. So that was one more thing that women had to overcome. Is just like, well, now I'm down to one toilet. Hopefully it's available when I need it. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges that you might not think of having not experienced it yourself.
Yeah, I just think that's super incredible. Literally, again, that just never crossed my mind that a toilet wouldn't be able to handle,
right?
Yeah, a woman's menstruating cycle, right? But like, if your team of astronauts is only male, it's just not something that you're thinking about. So, like, go USA for thinking about that. But also, I'm curious to know, Boone, for you, what was the biggest challenge to creating the design, taking that on? I know you said, I kind of took it on as a joke, but then when you got serious about it, for you, what was the most challenging part?
And I think the most challenging part was getting the report, the technical writing side of things all put together. The ideas came pretty naturally to us. We had 4 people on our team, plus Susan as our consultant. We were able to bounce ideas off each other, and all the ideas came pretty fluidly, like organically. And so it wasn't a lot of like stress on the brain there, but putting it into the correct words that the NASA judges would, be able to look at this and say, oh, this could actually work. That was a real challenge. And one of the guys on our team, Josh, was just a complete wordsmith. And so I would do the first draft. I would say, here's kind of the message I want to convey in this part. and Josh would zhuzh it up, and it would be like, wow, I think NASA will like that. So that was probably the hardest thing for me, and thankfully I had a guy on the team that was really good at it.
I was curious if Susan, did she share anything? Or I should say, General Helms, right? I mean, she is a 3-star general. That's pretty impressive. But did she share with you any particular mishaps that have occurred that she would mind you sharing, or is that top secret?
Well, there's 2 stories that Susan has. One of them was her first mission. They were taking up the shuttle Endeavour. It was that mission right there, and it had a brand new space toilet on it. Like $20 million went into the research and development for the space toilet, and this was the first mission they were going to try it out. And there's apparently a little sensor on it that would alert mission control if the lid was left up, because you don't want that lid left up, because then stuff will come out in zero gravity. And so there was some glitch that made the computer think that the lid was open when it wasn't. And so I got back to mission control. Hey, somebody left the lid up. They went and I don't know how they fixed it, but they made it so that the computer understood that the lid was in fact closed. But by the next day, it was every front page that the astronauts can't figure out how to close the toilet. And so she thought that was pretty funny, that this tiny little thing of oh yeah, that's just a glitch. And then it just became headline news the next day. This was 1993. And then the other great story she had, necessarily a poop story, but vomiting is another thing we had to think about when designing the space toilet. You want to be able to use that toilet for vomiting without getting face full of what's already in there, right? And she was telling me that even though that's something that NASA was asking for in the design requirements, it's not necessarily the most feasible thing to do, because when you need to vomit in space, sickness, which is kind of like motion sickness, it's immediate. You're not going to get to the toilet in time unless you're already right next to it. And so pretty much all astronauts always have a barf bag on their bodies, like at all times, apparently. And so she was telling me one time, I don't know which mission it was that she was on 5 of them, but she felt that space sickness coming on, and she had no barf bag near her. So she had to just pull her shirt up over her head, vomit into her shirt so that it wouldn't get all over the information around her. And then she had to take her vomiting shirt off, wipe as much off of her head and face as she could, and get a new shirt. And I just thought that was really quick thinking, But yeah, that's the solution to that problem, is pull your shirt up over your head and vomit just all over your own face.
Yeah, just the fact of you just got to think everything's going to float around just automatically, even little drops. Oh, what's this little drop? Oh, is that a piece of poop? Is that some vomit? Somebody who's menstruating over on the other, the other pod or something. But just so many factors that, when you have gravity, okay, it's going to go down on the ground or down the hole. It's so to think about it, but so that's super cool.
Right. So while Susan didn't have any necessarily floater stories, there is a really famous one you guys have probably already heard about Apollo 10 on their way to the moon. There's a transcript. There's even a recording that the 3 astronauts, one of them saying, "Oh, we got a floater. We got who did this?" And nobody fesses up to it. But Gene Cernan has a pretty unconvincing, "I don't think it was me," so I'm pretty sure it was him. But that's I think the most well-known floater incident in space.
Yeah, we've listened to that. We've listened to that recording, and that's the thing that strikes you, right? It's almost just like, okay, you're all adults here. Nobody's gonna fess up to the fact that, oh, maybe that was mine. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we have a visitor. Are you gonna say hi to everybody? The other thing that I was thinking is these are the things that, I don't know, do we tell children about? You might be vomiting in your own shirt in space. Do we crush their dreams early? No. Do we encourage it? Yes, there's innovative ways to continue to be an astronaut, even if you got to do the hard, gross stuff.
I think if you really want to go to space, it won't persuade you too much to know that you might want to have vomit into your own shirt and get it all over your face.
Yes.
It's the less glamorous aspects of being an astronaut, right? Maybe you have to sit next to your companion's poop floating around in the space capsule. That's the downside, right?
Well, and I think what was it Inspiration 4? There was a recent all civilian crew mission where they had problems with the toilet, and they couldn't use it. They had to resort to using the old Apollo bags. If you guys are familiar with these, for your viewers who aren't familiar with it, it's essentially just a bag with some adhesive around the edge. You would just stick to your butt, and you would poop into the bag and pinch it off, and then seal it up, and hopefully it seals in the smell too. But that was the old school way of doing it when they didn't have a toilet on the capsule. And then Inspiration 4, they had a problem with the capsule, the toilet leaking, or I can't remember what the issue was, but I think they went the full 3 days without being able to use it or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah, I think SpaceX had that problem. They had a leak in the container, and it was actually it didn't escape the floor seal, but at least it was floating around. And so the next mission they hadn't fixed it yet, and so they just put diapers on everybody.
Oh, really? Didn't know that.
So Boone, what's the next phase? Is it now? I mean, you've won the challenge. Does NASA? I guess there's no indication that they would actually build it, or is there another phase where you actually would build the prototype, or is it now NASA's prerogative to build it, or what's the next step?
So at this point, I'm a spectator. NASA, as part of the challenge, said that anybody who enters a design, we're allowed to use your designs without you copywriting it and charging us to use your designs. And you can still copyright it in case you want to try and get other space agencies in the world to use your design and have them pay you. But we didn't bother with that. But at this point, we don't know how much of our design, if any, will make it to the final product. NASA takes all the designs from the competition, and their engineers kind of just run with it, and they can try out different things. They can build a prototype. They can do further research into the technologies that we've said might work together, and we're just spectators on the sidelines at this point, unless NASA hires me. Wink, wink, NASA. And then I'd be able to be more hands-on with the development of the toilet. So next steps are just sort of waiting and seeing what their engineers come up with. If we're really lucky, they'll build our prototype, and they'll find that it works great and way better than current space toilets, and our whole design will make it to the final product. That'd be the ideal situation, but you never know what can happen. So hopefully some element of it does make it to the moon's surface, so I can say that part of me is up there on the moon getting pooped into, but yeah, I got my fingers crossed.
Oh, that's super cool. We'll be definitely forwarding this podcast on to NASA. I did wear my NASA shirt, just to give you some good vibes. And I think hopefully they'll take it on and build it. I think, I don't know, how much money do you think they need to build the thing? I mean, a couple $1 billion should be easy for Congress to allocate that.
Yeah, I mean, the last toilet they designed, I think it was $23 million. And I feel like this one you could do for a couple $100, but I could be wrong about that.
We're generous in our estimations. That's awesome. No, I hope that for you too. I wish that for you. And that would be, I guess that's the question, right? If NASA was like, hey, Boone, we've got an opening for a civil engineer. You're designing toilets for the rest of your life. Are you like, I'm there, moving to Texas tomorrow?
100%. Don't let my employer see this video, but yes, 100%. If NASA comes calling, I'm gone.
Very cool. And I'm curious, you spoke a lot in your video that Darren and I had watched previously, and which is linked in our show notes below, that you're wanting to just make your kids' world space.
Yeah.
What do they think of this amazing achievement that you've had? Have you told them? Do they understand? I'm not even sure their ages. I think you have a baby, but then some older children as well.
Oh yeah, our kids are 5, 8, and 1.5. And I don't know if they have any concept of or have any impression that Dad's actually cool for having helped design a space toilet, but they are aware of it. And I've been pretty successful in getting them interested in space. My oldest daughter, Clover, she's got a favorite planet, Mars, and a favorite rocket, the Saturn V. And she'll tell you all kinds of space facts. And Fox, my middle child, he's a space fan, but he's like hit or miss on whether or not he'll say yes when I ask him, "Are you going to go to space someday?" Some days he'll be like, "No, of course not. That's ridiculous." And other days he'll be like, "Of course I'm going." And why would you even ask that? Of course you know I'm going. So he's hard to predict. But Clover's for sure going to space.
I love it. I love it. I love that you've done that.
Hopefully by the time they're adults, it'll be just kind of a common thing, like jumping on a plane. Oh, you going to space? Oh yeah, I'm going next week.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'm hoping that this is going to be like the dawn of just like how commercial flights became. It used to be just for the ultra rich, and then became way more affordable, and now everybody flies. And I hope this kind of goes that same direction. That it'll be commonplace for regular folks like us to get up into space.
Would certainly be incredible. I love it. Well, Boone, unfortunately, we're out of time for our discussion, but just want you to know how thankful we are for you joining us here on the ZuLoo Poodcast to share a little bit more about your story with us. I mean, truly such a phenomenal accolade to have, an accomplishment. And while your kids are little now, they get just, inklings of it, it's going to be like the hit news for the rest of their lives growing up. My dad designed a toilet for space. I know I'm going to brag about it. I'm not even related to you, so I'm excited.
Well, fingers crossed would actually do make it to the moon, because then I'll be bragging every day.
Yes, totally.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Boone, like
the outlaw,
the outlaw, this bunky guy. I mean, his story is just so genius and inspiring, because here you have your like childhood hero, and it's a full circle story, right? Like he has this childhood hero, and then like 20 years later comes back and gets to help him design this award-winning space toilet.
Yeah, it is pretty cool to hear the whole evolution from when he was a kid to this, pinnacle moment where he saves all astronauts from uncomfortable bathroom situations.
Especially female astronauts.
That's right.
Yeah.
I know. So men do care about women in the restaurant.
After
all. And Boone is an example. Thank you, Boone. Saving us. Thank you.
Thank you, Boone.
Thank you very much.
You redeemed mankind.
Yeah, I don't think we've heard the last of Boone, though. I mean, he's got some other ideas up his sleeve. He's
Absolutely.
got some creativity going on. I could see him, next time they go to, Mars, they're like, "Hey, Boone, come on out."
He just becomes the official consultant.
Seat.
Yeah.
Oh, dream job for Boone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or, "Hey, we got some technical difficulties on our Martian toilet. Can you fly out tomorrow?" And Boone would be like, "Yes, I'm on that flight."
They need to hire Boone to be the container specialist for the collection retrieval mission in 2024.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. He would be great.
Yeah.
And his kids too.
Because
his kids are like, they're probably
science
probably
whizzes.
going to Mars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, he's probably also going to be the first person to just buy that commercial flight ticket, on SpaceX or something like that.
Yeah. Tempting
to throw your life savings into that to see what good old planet Earth looks like from above.
Yeah, true.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the ZuLoo Poodcast. Remember to tell your friends about it and to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the ZuLoo Poodcast. Follow us on social media at our links in the show notes below. To learn more, visit our website, ZuLoo.org. If you liked the podcast, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. For even more ZuLoo fun, send us an email with your toilet stories to podcast@ZuLoo.com for a chance to be featured on the podcast. This episode of the ZuLoo Poodcast is sponsored by ZuLoo Inc., a benefit corporation dedicated to the goal of universal access to toilets, hygiene, clean water, and sanitation through the power of social enterprise. Learn more at ZuLoo.com.